Everyone knows the good RPGs for the Super NES. You don't need me to tell you why you should defeat the alien god monster at the end of time, or repair the Star Road. But what are the weirdest RPGs in the library? Which games take your pitiful RPG expectations and raffle stomps their fragile little skulls against the curbs of innovation? Well, I have my opinions, and as usual, I can't shut up about them. This is Unepic Adventures for the Super Nintendo. Inindo Way of the Ninja is this weird Final Fantasy-style RPG from KOEI, a company normally known for their somewhat complex simulation wargames, such as Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Nobunaga's Ambition, and Gemfire. Besides Inindo, the closest they had ever come to releasing something that resembled a real RPG was the Uncharted Water series, which were really more merchant trading simulators than anything else. And I still can't figure out ship combat, but now we're just sailing off topic. Even though the bulk of Inindo's gameplay is spent duking it out with dickhead ninjas. Seriously, these psychopaths will randomly attack you for minding your own business. And mythological Japanese demons, in semi-tactical random battle form I may add, the game still manages to infuse a ton of strategic KOEI touches to the experience. All the while your little ninja dude is spelunking dungeons and traipsing across feudal Japan, a war rages across the nation. Every in-game month you're shown a map of Nippon and given a territory-by-territory update on which daimyo is currently kicking whose butt. Later, you'll be given a chance to influence the outcome of these skirmishes by engaging in strategic battles similar to those used in KOEI's better-known games. The story setup goes something like this. Oda Nobunaga has slaughtered the ninjas of Clan Iga in his campaign to conquer all the kingdoms of Japan. The playable hero is the sole survivor of this massacre, and now, justifiably pissed, seeks to kill the legendary warlord. In fact, if you don't kill Nobunaga within a few years, it's game over. But before your little ninja dude can enact his revenge, he has to complete a series of super secret ninja trials and become a fully certified death machine. A process which involves way less cool ninja tricks than you'd imagine, and more dungeon vermin eradication than seems necessary. I mean, your companions pick up their cool ninja spells just by leveling up, while you have to retrieve ceremonial baubles from complex labyrinths. That hardly seems fair. But at least you don't have to do it alone. You gain the respect of your fellow warriors by chatting them up in the local inns and tea houses of the game's many settlements, or by kicking their sorry ninja butts. You always know that you're in for a good time when you pop in a HAL cartridge. Even today, Arcana remains one of my favorite dungeon crawlers. It balances dizzying maze exploration with a satisfying if occasionally sadistic leveling curve. But it just wouldn't be a real dungeon crawler without a few infuriating setbacks. I swear, masochists are drawn to the genre like poop-hungry flies. The quality writing, mature plotline, and stunning visuals would be enough to set Arcana apart from similar games for the system, but none of these attributes would qualify as strange enough for this list. You see, players adopt the role of rooks, a talented card master who controls battle cards with the power to summon elemental spirits and perform one-use magical abilities. And when HAL commits to designing a card RPG, by Kirby, they go balls deep in designing a card RPG. Everything and everyone in this game is represented by playing cards. And that's both awesome and hilarious. On one hand, the cards look cool, the enemies are vividly animated, and when one of your card summons dies, they get violently torn in half. Brutal. And then there's this weird disconnect where you have a very serious storyline being acted out by static playing cards. Arcana's just goofy, and all the more amazing for it. Secret of the Stars looks terrible. It's ugly, and the writing sucks. But it was in the town of Bee Gees, as I stood knee-deep in transmutated dogs, that I experienced a revelation. Stars isn't just some kiddie RPG. It's batshit insane. You control the Aquatalion, just your average band of superhero orphan children who traverse the world completing totally normal tasks, such as emancipating a community of farmers from the slave driver giant with your super sciencey shrink ray, and retrieving the dragon's mustache to cure the man with the golden legs. Of course, being weird doesn't make the game good, and surprise, it's not. At all. It's a terrible, bad, ungood train wreck of a game with bold ideas and failed execution. For example, you're given the freedom to adventure as either the Aquatalian Wonder Kids or as a band of mostly useless adults. I don't really know why. The Castera are limited to their own segregated dungeons and alternative dungeon paths, and any equipment or money they find is for their use only. You could literally run from all the battles they encounter and reach endgame without having leveled them at all. The undercurrent of pointlessness extends to the management of Old Hill, an interactive settlement that you populate throughout your travels but are otherwise given zero control over. Instead of being a fun city management minigame, as occasionally found in other much better RPGs, Old Hill is sadly little more than an endgame convenience mall. Fun can be had with Secret of the Stars as you marvel at the hilariously stupid dialogue and funky-ass enemy designs. Each quest prompting the incredulous question, "You want me to do what now?" But a series of poor design choices and wildly inconsistent leveling curve keeps the experience from being genuinely enjoyable. Okay, so Paladin's quest isn't very good. At all. But I think for this particular nomination, the weird is just too compelling to ignore. The planet Lennis is a wonder to behold, with its otherworldly inhabitants, geometric foliage, unconventional pink and teal color palette, and its beautifully complex interior mosaics. The game is visually stunning. It absolutely feels as though the player has been dropped into an alien landscape. Even though most JRPGs are set in not Earth, they still feel relatable. Like an Earth that could have been, had we dragons and magic and other Tolkien fantasy bullshit. But Lennis is completely alien to our current medieval fantasy ideal, and instead appears to draw inspiration from the sci-fi illustrated aesthetic of the 1970s. I wanted to love this game based on the world building alone, but actually playing it sucks a fat load of flaccid donkey dong. The combat is awful, the leveling is awful, and the writing is awful. Even the play mechanics are needlessly abstract to the point of being unapproachable. The combat is just your typical turn-based you-hit-they-hit nonsense, but with an added layer of selecting your action by way of appropriate body part via the D-pad. It's unnecessary and dumb, and adds nothing new to the standard experience of menu battling, besides additional button pressing, for the sake of button pressing. And because the placement of targeted enemies change up between battles or mob deaths, you never get a handle on a repeatable pattern, meaning you have to pay close attention to every tedious trash mob. No mindless button pressing permitted. But hey, at least you can play with one hand. I guess that's a plus somehow? It's a dumb system designed for a dumb game. I'm only a few hours into the adventure, but it seems as though I can never get a leg up on my enemies. They hit too hard, have too many hit points, and return very little XP. I spend the majority of the game grinding every area and desperately quaffing potions between battles. This problem is exasperated by the game's complete lack of healing magic. In fact, spellcasters, or spiritualists, sacrifice their own health to cast magic. There is no MP. But all this grueling circle walking completely ruins any flow the plot may have had. I mean, it wasn't a very good plot. Basically, the main character screws up big time and spends the rest of the game traveling from town to town personally witnessing the negative impact of his dumb fuckery and fixing it. But every little dungeon has this nice little skit that keeps the game from being monotonous. Or it would if you weren't constantly doing figure eights and getting your ass kicked. Paladin's Quest is worth a visit for no other reason than to experience the most unusual looking RPG on the Super Nintendo. But only the phenomenally patient are going to stick around long enough to see it through to the end. Grab near nose, that sure as hell ain't me. And there you have it, 4 of the freakiest RPGs for Nintendo's RPG Golden Child. If I had to pick a 5th, it would be Earthbound, so hands off the keyboard and don't bother yelling at me. It didn't make the cut. That's right, I said it. Earthbound wasn't different enough for the list of weird RPGs. It's just a modern-day Dragon Quest clone that's been smacked by an ugly stick.